Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another one of ByteSpeed's webinars here. We're excited to have an awesome new partner with us in Redbird Aviation. We're definitely looking forward to showing everybody this new solution lineup and kind of talking about one of our newest partnerships here at ByteSpeed. For those of you that are joining in right now, thanks for coming in and welcome. My name is Josh Knutson. I'm the Gravity Gaming Solutions Director here at ByteSpeed. My department covers our esports, VR, and flight sim operations. So super excited to be on the webinar as your kind of moderator and host, and kind of tell the story of why we are on the call today and why we've chosen to partner with Redbird. Last year, kind of in 2023, ByteSpeed really identified flight simulator solutions as a growing need for our customer base. A lot of who we work with are schools. A lot of the attendees on here today are school districts. And we keep hearing this buzz about like, hey, do you have something for flight simulation? Do you have, anything curriculum driven or something that pairs well with flight careers and things like that. And even in kind of our own research and looking at kind of what the industry looked like, there's this kind of cool stat that we've been sharing, or maybe it's not a cool stat, but half of all the licensed pilots are within 15 years of retirement. And that was something that kind of shocked us here at ByteSpeed. And we're like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And if you travel as much as I do, or you're flying around the country and you notice, sometimes it's hard to get flights. Sometimes it's your options are limited. And if half of those pilots were to just disappear, that creates a challenge and an opportunity for a lot of students to look at a new career field that they might not have seen on their horizon. And I think in our research and looking for partners in the space to kind of build out a really cool solution lineup, Redbird made a ton of sense for us to reach out to. They are a leader in the space on the simulation front and on the hardware front, and we're really excited to share kind of their solution lineup today. And I've got a really great co-host to kind of talk through everything on the Redbird side of the house. But we're really excited here at ByteSpeed to offer a lot of different options for simulators, from the entry-level side all the way up to certifiable rigs through Redbird that are really game-changing and open the door for the career pathways for students. And that's really what we're all here today to talk about. So I think it's definitely important to know kind of where we're coming from and why we've chosen such a great partner in the aviation space. And to talk about Redbird and kind of why we're here today, I'm going to pass things over to Josh, our second Josh on the call today, and let him kind of take it away. Josh, go for it.
Oh, thank you. My name is Josh Harnagle, and I'm the VP of Marketing for Redbird. I appreciate ByteSpeed for hosting this, and thank you to Josh for getting this set up. I'm going to hopefully turn my screen on here. We'll see how that works. All right, so I believe y'all can see this. I'm going to walk through a little bit about kind of the background of Redbird, and then we'll talk, kind of go over sort of our main product set, the product set especially that's useful in the classroom, and kind of where we're at and hopefully where we're going. And I'd like to leave some time for questions if they come up, or if you have anything. So feel free to use the Q&A feature or however Josh suggests to do that.
Yeah, Q&A and chat are both open and ready to go. So feel free to throw those in, and we'll definitely have some time at the end to go through them all.
All right, so let's go ahead. So yes, my name is Josh Harnagle, VP of Marketing. I am a pilot, flight instructor of various types, and have trained, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 hours training people how to learn to fly, how to stay proficient, all that kind of stuff. And I use the sims in my own personal training quite a bit. And I have a lot of experience integrating it into classrooms. I help lead the sort of the initiative for Redbird to get involved in the K-12 space a number of years ago, and have quite a bit of sort of firsthand experience working with schools on putting together a program, an aviation program. And it's important to recognize that the simulators are just a component, a tool inside of a bigger aviation program. And there's lots of stuff that's involved in it. if you're kind of going down that path. And we do have and some really knowledgeable and talented folks on staff that can kind of help put together programming as well. But let's talk about kind of where we came from. So Redbird was started in 2007 by a group of pilots who sort of looked at the state of flight training, really pilot training simulators, and recognized there was an opportunity. So we came up with a bunch of stuff that we said simulators got to be able to do this for it to be really valuable. We got them all except for the price. We ended up at our initial price was $59,000 instead of $50,000. So this is kind of one of those starts in the garage kind of project. So in 2007, we built a plywood box with some hydraulic actuators that was terrible and made people fall and barely worked. And then over the years, we sort of developed a different approach to it, switched to electric motors instead of hydraulic for a motion system. And then that version 6 on the right-hand side of the screen is the current FMX, which is our sort of flagship product, really for the flight training space in particular. So we've expanded our product line quite a bit. We have, starting at the kind of the smaller end, we have our alloy controllers, which are USB controllers that plug into a desktop simulator like Microsoft Flight Sim or X-Plane running on a PC or a Mac. They are all metal construction and really designed for kind of harder abuse than a lot of the plastic ones that are out there. And then of particular interest to the K-12 space is the J Velocity, which is a all-in-one flight simulator that easy to set up, easy to manage, and doesn't require buying a computer and a monitor and picking flight sim software and all that kind of stuff. It just comes in a box, you plug it in, and it's ready to go. And then we have another desktop sim, which is an FAA-approved device, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means. And then we get into our larger stuff that are kind of a different ball game in terms of both cost, but also capabilities. Importantly, and I threw this slide in here because one of the things that we noticed when we first got into the classroom is that unlike flight school, the folks that are the teacher in the classroom might not have any aviation experience, A, and B, it's a much different training environment than a flight school. In a flight school, you have one student, one instructor. They spend 30 or 40 minutes talking, and then they get in the sim and they do a session, and it's very hands-on, very one-on-one, and there's not a lot of management. And in a classroom, you have 20 or 30 kids, some of whom don't really want to be there, some of whom are really engaged and really are trying to get the most out of it. And you have a teacher who potentially doesn't really know that much about aviation. And so we developed some software and tools and training that can kind of help manage that. So one of the most important ones is something we call Tracon, which is a classroom management software, and we'll talk in some depth about that. But essentially what it allows you to do is to control a fleet of simulators from one station. So you could have 20 sims, 20 Js plugged in, and you can start flights and stop flights and add failures and change the weather and all that kind of stuff on all 20 sims at the same time, or maybe half of those sims and the other half of do something else. So it really allows you to manage all the devices that are connected in. And we are the only provider of hardware that's got a built sort of custom made integrated classroom management tool that's available. We also have a product called Simulated Flight School, which is a curriculum available online that focuses on maneuvers-based training, really less the knowledge stuff, but really more on the in-sim stuff. If you're familiar with aviation in high schools in particular, the AOPA has released a curriculum called it's a 4-year program, and it really is designed to get somebody to pass a private pilot written exam. So it's knowledge. We do have a sim supplement that goes with that. But if you're sort of building more of a program that's focused on like career path, the idea of being able to get people prepared to take a private pilot check ride, or at least get them started down that path, the Simulated Flight School option is really a nice tool. it has pre-programmed missions that run on the sims, and they grade the flights, and the teacher can review it and all that kind of stuff. And then all of this runs through an LMS that we've set up that's got free courses as well as paid courses, and all the activity that your students do on the simulator is reported up into the LMS, can be viewed by the teacher and reported on and all that kind of stuff. And then because this tends to be kind of a complicated deal for a lot of schools, we offer professional development training. And I'll say a little asterisk on that. We also offer consulting services where it's just like, I don't know what we need to do. Can you help me? We'll come in and sort of help set up a program. If you have an existing program, or you're kind of expanding into hardware, sim hardware, we can send somebody on site to help train the teachers how to fly the sim, but also how to operate it in a classroom, how to manage the classroom, all that kind of stuff. So we have a whole sort of suite of tools here that can kind of help in that in the classroom space in particular. So there you go. Just a little brag slide, I guess. We are growing quite quickly and have been growing since started delivery, which was right around the end of 2008. We started actually delivering to customers. Now, this particular slide is full of logos of a bunch of flight schools and universities, but we also happen to be the largest sim provider by customers in the K-12 space as well. And we have over 4,500 devices all around the world, and quite a bit of experience in various categories in the various market segments. So you want to start a flight school, we can help you. You want to put an aviation program into a high school or middle school, we can help you there as well. All right, so let's talk real quick about product stuff. In particular, I'm going to go through 3 of our main hardware solutions that ByteSpeed is representing and are quite popular in the K-12 space. So the first one is the big boy. It's the MCX. It is a full motion 3 degree of freedom simulator that is FAA approved and accurately represents a specific aircraft, like a Cessna 172 or a Diamond or whatever. It has got dual controls, so you can have a student on the left, an instructor on the right, or you can do 2 students in it, and the back is open. Wraparound visuals, over 200 degrees of visual representation, and then the controls are interchangeable, so you can have more than one aircraft type. These start at $89,000, I believe. Your average installation is probably about $100K when you add options and shipping and all that kind of stuff. These are certainly used in the more kind of advanced programs, I'd say. In the school districts that have really embraced aviation, you tend to see them have added MCX to an existing simulator fleet. So maybe they have 20 or 25 Js or a couple of TDs, and they want to really expand it out and maybe partner with a local flight school and make the training even more impactful for the students and really put them on a pilot career path. The MCX is a great tool for that. It is currently our most popular product in the flight school market, and it's definitely a big it's an attention getter in a high school space as well, for sure. And then stepping down quite a bit from that, but this is really these products are called the TD and TD2. They're desktop units, but these are FAA approved. So folks can, if you have an instructor, your students can actually log time towards their certificate of rating with it. And we do see a number of schools implement these. Your kind of typical well-developed aviation program will have maybe an introductory class where they have a bunch of Js, which we'll get to next, and then they'll have a more advanced, private pilot training or instrument training class that will start to use the TDs, because they are they are more specific to the actual aircraft and do a much better job of emulating avionics and all that kind of stuff than something like the J. So it provides a good foundation for real actual pilot training, and tends to work really well with something like the simulated flight school program that we've put together. And then kind of going down from that, and this is the bread and butter in the K-12 high school, middle school space. It's the J Velocity. So the J, like I said, is an all-in-one desktop simulator. So you buy it, you get the monitor, you get the computer, you get the hardware, you get the software. There's warranty options with extended warranty options. And you plug it in and it just works. It's not like you have to do any configuration on setting up flight sim or anything like that. Typically what we'll see is a classroom of these, so somewhere between 4 and 24. I'll say, generally speaking, 20 is about the most you'd want to manage in a classroom. When you get more than that, it starts to get a little unruly. What we recommend to people is that they have either teams of 2 or teams of 3 students on each J, and they operate in sort of a multi-crew environment instead of just a single pilot. So that way the students that aren't flying can learn. And so if you think about that from a classroom side, if your class is, let's say, 28 students or something like that, you could do 14 Js, and that'll fill the whole class, and everybody will have something to do during a class period. They can simulate a bunch of different aircraft. So these are not FAA approved. We don't have any restrictions, because that's the flip side of an actual FAA approval, is that you get restricted on what you can do with the thing. So this is not FAA approved, so we can fly everything from a 737 through a Piper Cub, really big airplane, really small airplane. And it's great in sort of intro to aviation classes, or as a supplement aid to the AOPA high school curriculum. If you're just using aviation to teach concepts, this is a math or science or weather or whatever it happens to be, the J is a really nice product for that. When you want to extend your training beyond that and you want to get into real pilot training, something like the TD or ideally the MCX is really the where you want to be. But you can get the J is an excellent product for introducing aviation. And we have, I will say, we have 2 versions of this. The first one we came out with was the J, just J. And it was really designed for home use. We started selling those into schools and getting a lot of support requests based on it. So we came up with the J Velocity, which is, I think, $1,000 more, maybe a little more than that. But it is designed for this kind of environment. It is designed for being operated in a school or in a public space where it's not like owner operated. And so it's got a more robust yoke. The internals are a little bit more powerful, and it's just tends to work better in a school or classroom environment. So before I move on, are there any questions around product stuff?
No, Josh, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A other than just kind of pricing, and can we share the slide deck afterwards?
Yeah.
But I guess maybe one kind of question that we can talk, and you kind of alluded to it, but for most of the schools that Redbird has kind of helped work with, you said they've kind of started with the J Velocity and kind of built up. What does a typical deployment look like? All said and done.
So generally speaking, what we've seen is a school, or really a lot of times it starts at the district level, like a CTE director will say, hey, we need to do aviation programming, and they'll start out with something like 4 Js, and then they'll add another 8 to them so they can do a full class, and then maybe they upgrade and add 2 more TDs. But what ends up happening, the main sort of the end result tends to be something around 12 to 16 Js, a couple of TDs or TD2s, and then an MCX. If the district or the school really embraces aviation training significantly, that's where they tend to go. It honestly usually is a multi-year process to get there, but we have had some schools come in and say, hey, we want the whole package. Let's start from the beginning, and that's what we recommend, because that does is it creates a nice pipeline where you can have an intro class where you be a pretty large class and everybody gets a chance to fly, and then maybe private pilot training essentially class where you use the TDs mostly and a little bit of the MCX, and then maybe even an instrument rating capstone course or something like that, whatever you call it, where it's just TDs and MCX, and there's the class sizes will get smaller as you go, and it really does create a nice pipeline for them. And as far as pricing goes, obviously I'm sure it'll be on the ByteSpeed website or on the Redbird website, but kind of ballpark picture, something like a TD, you would expect to spend with options and all the stuff that you want to get, you're probably going to be in the somewhere between $9,000 and $12,000. The J Velocity, you're probably going to be somewhere in the $4,000 or $5,000 a unit range.
Awesome. One other question that kind of came through here, Josh, is how does this actually work towards becoming a pilot? Can you talk about the process that a student might go through to kind of start on the entry level and then kind of work its way up?
Yeah, so to become a pilot, to earn a private pilot certificate, or even let's say we'll go through the whole become a career pilot. It starts with earning a private pilot certificate, where you need a student pilot certificate and pass a medical exam from an FAA designated medical examiner. Obviously, those are things that the student's going to have to do on their own. And then there's a written exam that you have to pass, and then a flying requirement in terms of number of hours and procedures that you do, and then you take a check ride with a FAA designated pilot examiner. So how the school helps in that is all the knowledge testing, so all the stuff to take the written exam, can be done in school, and that is a certification. So I know that can be quite important for grant money. That is taking a private pilot written exam does qualify for most grants as a course leading to a certification. And then you can use the simulators to teach the maneuvers and how to fly the airplane. The schools that really embrace it will go out and find a flight school in the local area, create a partnership, and usually there's some sort of funding mechanism to sort of offset the cost, or at least partially offset the cost for the students, and they'll go out and get their pilot's license. The way you have to keep in mind the age limit. You can solo when you're 16, and you do have to solo some before you can get your license, and then you can get your license when you're 17. From that point on, once you get your private pilot's license, typically, if the student says, this is what I want to do, that usually happens outside of the class, outside of the sort of the school. They'll enroll in a flight training program that is really specific to becoming a professional pilot. And that'll usually takes about 2 years to get all the way through training, and then you'll probably work as a flight instructor for a little while, build some time, and then go on to an airline or a small charter operation from there. But it's and if you think about it compared to a lot of careers, it's a 2.5 year technical education program that within 4 or 5 years of graduating, you can be making 6 figures easy. So there is a very compelling case for pilots, especially in the market right now. And if a high school can sort of help them get over the initial hurdles, which is by far the hardest part, it tends to be very overwhelming for folks when they're coming in to sort of figure out where to go, what to do, and how to get there. And I think there's a real opportunity for schools to really impact people's lives.
Awesome. And just so everybody knows, I threw the kind of link in the chat here, but for pricing and quote request stuff, you can just head on over to that link, bytespeed.com/redbird. And there's a form at the bottom of the page that we can get in touch with you and kind of pass along some more specific pricing on what you're looking at. That was kind of all the questions that we've got so far, Josh. So feel free to move on to the next item here, and I'll keep watching the Q&A as we keep going.
All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what this means in the classroom, like how you would actually operate it. And so we have one of my team members on staff is a guy named Greg Roark, who was a public school teacher, also a pilot, and he is our director of K-12 education. And he's really, really, really pushed the envelope on what we can do in a classroom, and really come up with some strong sort of best practices. And he's the person who does the professional development for the most part. So if you're talking about what it looks like in a classroom, usually you'll have a set up of J's like this, and you'll have 2 to 3 students at each one. And that on the left and on the right, that's Tracon with 4 flights running. And you'll notice if you pay close attention to that, those are 4 flights that are running in similar area, but completely separate flights. So it's each one of these J's, each one of these student groups is sort of on their own adventure, and they're learning how to deal with the weather or any issues that are coming up for during the flight. And the instructor has the ability to pause, stop, add weather, failures, whatever, as each group or each simulator moves along. And they can then choose to group all the sims together, manage them all as one unit, or they can break half and half, all kinds of things. So it really does allow you to manage a classroom well. And in the most recent version that we released earlier this year in July, it includes intercoms. So hopefully in a couple of months, I'll get some good pictures. And so the picture on the left, instead of kids just sitting there, they'll be sitting there with headsets on, and the instructor will be able to talk to each sim independently or talk to all the students over the intercom. And I'll say in the pilot training business, in the flight school business that I have the most experience in, when you put the headset on, it really does change the name of the game, because it's no longer video game. It feels the real aviation headsets. It feels a lot more realistic, and it definitely impacts any sort of behavioral kind of stuff. It really does make it a lot more useful and easier to manage, honestly. So we're excited about that as an add-on. So talking about Tracon, like I showed you earlier, on this picture on the left-hand side, these 2 computers are actually set up running the same instance of Tracon. And when you the grid here, when you get more than 12 units on a single Tracon network, it tends to take up the full screen. So we will set up 2 screens for larger classrooms if you have 14 or 16 or something like that. So that way we can view each independent sim with enough detail. And then you can have in this case here, we have 4 sims connected to the network, and on the left screen we have the primary flight display for each unit, and then on the right screen we actually have an overview map that shows where all the sims are in space. So we can click on a unit, direct them where they need to go, whatever the case may be. I did pull up the Q&A panel here, so I think there's a couple questions I can answer directly. So a question about the learning curve for the instructor station that we have for our larger sims in particular. We call it Redbird Navigator, and it is very straightforward to use. It runs probably very familiar to, if you are a pilot, if you've ever used an app called ForeFlight, which is a flight planning app that basically every pilot uses. We copied it. They know we copied it, but we did copy their UI so that it would kind of give a good starting place. And so I wouldn't expect too long of a learning curve for most things on, and this applies actually to Tracon as well. It's very straightforward for all the stuff that you would do in a normal flight: failures, position, basic weather themes, weight and balance, time of day, all that kind of stuff. It gets a little complicated when you do advanced weather, where you're making multiple cloud layers and visibility layers and a wind layer, and I want it to change over time. Like the UI on that it's just a very difficult thing for us to even think through how to make it less complicated. So I apologize. It's a pet peeve of mine. I would prefer it to be a little more intuitive, but I just can't think of a way to make it more intuitive. But generally speaking, we don't have many issues or complaints on the instructor station outside of that advanced weather functionality. And then, so what is the length of the flight? Should we, so we could limit to time of the class. So the flights are generally speaking, open-ended. So you can start, stop, pause, end, whatever, each flight independently whenever you want to. There is a sort of category of flight that is tied to the simulated flight school where it's very specific to a lesson. So it'll be like, in the next slide, I think it'll show best angle of climb. So in that case, there's a pre-programmed starting point, gates in the sky that you fly through, specific tasks the pilot or a student is supposed to accomplish, and then we grade on it. All the flights that are like that are very short, 10 minutes tops. Most of them are probably 2 or 3 minutes because the individual tasks are really bite-sized. So from a time management perspective, it shouldn't be too big of a problem. Like if you had 3 students on a J and you wanted to get through a simulated flight school lesson, you're probably talking 15 minutes tops, and that includes changing pilots. So you may be able to 2 or whatever in a class period. Right. So, simulated flight school. So this is a good, bring it up here. On the left-hand side is the LMS. And for this lesson, we're lesson 4, climbs and descents, and that includes a number of different types of climbs and descents. You can see normal climb, best angle of climb, best rate of climb, and descent. So best angle of climb, we have some text here that talks about, this is for the student to watch or to read, talks about what you're doing in the airplane. And then we'll have a video that'll show it. And then they hop in the sim, they log into the sim, and then they fly this best angle of climb flight, and they'll get a score. So on the right-hand side, this is their score or a score associated with that. So they climbed, they climbed at the right altitude, at the right airspeed, to the right altitude, and they passed with a 98%. Once that flight is completed, assuming all the sims are connected to the internet, which they should be, but I will say that, and that's honestly the hardest part about installing in a school district, is that the firewall stuff can be difficult, but we have some experience with it, and we can work through that. But assuming the sim is connected to the internet, that score will be immediately passed up to the LMS, and the student and the teacher will both be able to view it and see and report on it over time. So anyways, simulated flight. All right, so let's talk a little bit about FAA approval or FAA certification. So all of our sims are approved at what's called the ATD level, which just means Aviation Training Device. There are 2 types of ATDs. There's an Advanced Aviation Training Device, and there's a Basic Aviation Training Device. So AATD and BATD. A BATD, a Basic Aviation Training Device, has a specific set of things that you're allowed to credit towards a private pilot certificate or instrument rating. A certain set of things you're allowed to do as a rated pilot. All of it is very explicitly explained in a letter you get when you buy the unit. Whether you're going to use it for FAA training or not, you still get the letter. But in general, a BATD can do about 10 hours towards an instrument rating. You can log all your instrument currency in it and a few other minor things. In AATD, you can do 20 hours towards an instrument rating, 2.5 hours towards a private pilot, and then everything else that BATD can do plus a little extra. Those are just different sort of certification or qualification standards that the FAA has published. And all of our larger sims, the FMX, MCX, LD, SD, they're all AATDs. The TD and TD2 are BATDs. What is nice about these from a K-12 perspective is these are qualified devices in the sense that a government authority has come in and said they approve these devices for training towards a pilot certificate, which tends to make funding a little easier to get as well. So what's not on this slide, and is probably the most important part of this, is a J Velocity is not an approved device. It's a flight sim computer, the FAA, and it's purposeful that we didn't get it approved because at these qualification or approval levels, there are restrictions on what you can do. So for example, a TD or a TD2 can only be really 2 different types of aircraft. MCX could be maybe 30 or 40, but they're all light, small airplanes with piston engines and propellers. A J can be any airplane because we don't have to emulate it exactly right to get FAA approval. So there's some pros and some cons to it, and it's one of the reasons we sort of recommend, if you're just starting a program, go with the J Velocity. It's easy to use, it's cheaper, and you can maybe hopefully get multiple, building some interest in the programming, and then move on to an approved device later on once that sort of demand is there, and honestly, once the school has got the internal capacity to handle it, because you do, when you get into a TD or especially an MCX, you do need an instructor that has some aviation experience to maximize the use of it for sure. All right, and that is the official end of my presentation as far as the program stuff. So I guess if there's not any other questions, Josh, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I guess maybe while some of the questions get typed up and sent in, can you talk a little bit about like what the on-site PD looks like and kind of how, for those teachers that might not have the background in aviation, how can we get them up to speed? How can we get them comfortable using Tracon and some of the hardware in the classroom to actually teach stuff?
So what we have available currently is on-site professional development, where we fly out a Redbird employee, almost for sure, Greg Rourke. We do have some other folks that can do it as well. We have a former classroom teacher who's now a charter pilot who has a bunch of experience, and his name's Chris Peterson. He may be involved some more going forward as well. But we'll send somebody who's trained by us and is qualified to do it to a classroom or to a school district. And it's usually a 2-day program. Kind of depends on schedules, but somewhere between 2 and 3 days or 2.5 days. And it starts, typically it starts with just basic, how do you fly an airplane stuff. And we assume, unless we hear otherwise, we assume that the teachers in the classroom don't know anything about it. And so we'll just go, how do you start the thing? How do you fly straight and level? What does this button do? And we're not going to get you your pilot's license in a day, but we'll get it to where you can, sort of get the airplane up in the air and give you enough of a foundation that the teachers can practice a little bit going forward. And then the second day will really be on classroom management, how to structure classes, and how to use the simulator in whatever curriculum that is being put in place, or maybe even help develop a curriculum to put in place. And so in that case, it's more application of the stuff they generally run it like the PD instructor is the teacher and the teachers are the students. And so you'll get plenty of application time on the second day to fly the sim a bunch. And so we do have applied for and have approval for CEs for most states, or maybe all states. For it as well. It's several $1,000s for us to come out to a place. It's not super cheap, but it's in the sort of normal pricing for that kind of on-site professional development. We are working on a shorter online course for folks to come in and just do either a refresher or just basic, like how to fly the J from a perspective of a teacher. That we hope to release soon. And then there's some troubleshooting stuff that'll go, that's part of that as well. So some technical, this breaks, what do you do? That breaks, what do you do? And then I'll throw in there, from a technical support side, all these units have a 1-year warranty. The small, like the J, has the ability to get an extended warranty. The larger units have service agreements that can be put in place with various different ways they're billed. But they tend to be certainly on the less expensive side compared to a lot of the competition. And they most of the time will include software updates and break fix support, but not on-site support. The on-site support tends to be a little too expensive for folks to want to. We used to offer that and nobody did it, so we got rid of that option. But generally speaking, especially like the J is just a computer, there's very little specific, technically difficult hardware that you have to deal with, and we can ship replacement parts and usually have a local person install it. Even if it's bring in a local computer tech, they can usually handle that pretty well. And we log in. Remote login is the number one thing we do. So we'll log in, update firmware, update core software, that kind of stuff. And from a support standpoint.
Awesome. I've had a couple of questions come in. And I had a question about middle school beginner curriculum and resources. Can you guys talk to that a little bit?
We are building one right now. I don't have it available currently, and I don't know a price on it, but we are actively working on it because it is definitely a need.
Awesome. And I know the AOPA curriculum starts out at like grade 9, so not
Yeah.
quite middle school, but trending that way.
Yeah.
And then there was kind of another question I think is really great is it okay to just start with 1J and
Yep.
maybe kind of how Josh, when you're talking with schools that might not have the budget to go all in right away, what's kind of your recommendation to kind of start small and grow over time?
So, generally speaking, budget is tied to interest and how much interest the students are showing into a program, how much interest parents and that kind of thing is showing in a program. And so I would definitely suggest, if you have any interest at all in doing something like this, get some hardware, make it a real thing, and not just a classroom slideshow presentation about aviation. But give them something that's a little interactive. The hardest part of it will be scheduling time to get people on the sim. If you have a class of 18 or 20 kids, and one unit, that'll be your biggest obstacle, is how do we get them on the sim. But it's better to get folks involved and give them an interactive way to engage in it, and build from there. And then wait and say, well, in 3 or 4 years, maybe we'll have budget to buy 5 or 10 units. Just get one, go ahead and get started. I think I agree that's for sure the best, better than waiting.
Awesome. Cool. I'm just going to throw in a couple of links here in the chat for everybody. This first one is just a link to ByteSpeed's kind of general aviation category page. You can dive in a lot more into what the Redbird Flight options that we have are linked from that page. We've got some resources linked out to AOPA curriculum and some other things like that. Just kind of helpful getting started options for you. And then, like I mentioned before, that bytespeed.com/redbird, we've got a contact form that you can fill out. It'll get kicked over to myself and some of the other folks here at ByteSpeed, and we can kind of schedule a consult call, maybe do a one-on-one, call with you, and we can have somebody from Redbird jump in and kind of help be our experts and kind of make sure that, whatever you're looking for, if it's questions you have answered, or if you're really ready for hardware and stuff, we can kind of answer the questions that you have and kind of build out a custom solution for your school. So I haven't seen any other questions come through. So Josh, I just thanks so much for taking some time today to jump in and kind of really lay out the amazing stuff that Redbird has available. And we're super stoked to have this partnership kind of kick off here in 2024, and really looking forward to making an impact in a lot of schools. Thanks so much to everybody who jumped in as an attendee today. The recording of this will get kicked out to your email that you used to sign up on. And Josh, is there anything that we could do to share the slide deck with everybody too?
I can email it to you as soon as we get
Awesome. Cool. So we'll send that out as well with the recording for everybody so that they have it. Contact information. What's the best way to get a hold of you, Josh? I'll throw my email in the chat here as well for people to grab in case they want to reach out directly.
Yeah. So probably, honestly, the easiest way is info@redbirdflight.com. If you ask for me, it'll get to me. If you just have generic questions, then somebody who gets that will be able to answer them.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all in the next webinar.